Imagine a world where your identity is as vulnerable as an unlocked smartphone. Well, that's the reality we're living in today. Financial fraud and identity theft have skyrocketed, with losses reaching a staggering £45 billion in 2020 alone.
Those numbers are truly mind-boggling. It's like we're in a constant digital war against invisible enemies.
Exactly. And that's why we're dedicating this episode to helping our listeners protect themselves. We'll be sharing some practical tips and strategies that anyone can implement to enhance their security and safeguard their hard-earned money. Let's start with the basics. Awareness. It's the first line of defense against fraud.
That makes sense. But what exactly should we be aware of?
Well, fraudsters often exploit common weaknesses like weak passwords or lack of caution to gain access to our personal and financial information. One of the simplest yet most effective things you can do is to use two-factor authentication, or 2FA, on all your accounts. It's like adding an extra lock to your door.
Oh, I've heard of that. It's when you need to enter a code from your phone after putting in your password, right?
Exactly. Even if someone manages to guess or steal your password, they still can't get into your account without that second piece of information. Now let's talk about passwords themselves. Using unique, strong passwords for each account is crucial. If one account gets compromised, at least the others are still safe.
I have to admit, I'm guilty of using the same password for multiple accounts. It's just so hard to remember different ones for everything.
You're not alone there. But here's a pro tip. Use a password manager. These apps can generate and store strong, unique passwords for all your accounts. You just need to remember one master password to access them all. It's a game changer for password security.
That does sound helpful. What other tips do you have for our listeners?
Another big one is to be wary of unsolicited calls or emails asking for personal information. This is a common tactic called phishing. Scammers pretend to be legitimate organisations to obtain your personal details. In fact, phishing attempts increased by 220% during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Wow, that's a huge jump. I've definitely gotten those kinds of calls before. They can be pretty convincing.
They absolutely can. The key is to never give out personal information unless you've initiated the contact. If you're unsure, hang up and call the company directly using their official contact details. It might feel a bit rude in the moment, but it's better to be safe than sorry.
That's great advice. What about physical documents? I've heard stories about identity thieves going through people's trash.
You're right to bring that up. It's called dumpster diving, and it might sound like something out of a movie, but it does happen. Identity thieves can piece together a surprising amount of information from discarded bills and statements. The simple solution is to shred any documents containing personal information before throwing them away.
I've been meaning to get a shredder. I guess this is my sign to finally do it.
It's definitely worth the investment. Another important habit is to regularly monitor your bank and credit card accounts for any unauthorized transactions. Ideally, you should review your accounts at least once a week. The sooner you catch any suspicious activity, the easier it is to prevent further loss and get your money back.
That makes sense. I've set up alerts on my accounts to notify me of any large transactions. It gives me peace of mind.
That's a great idea. Now let's talk about online security. As more of our financial lives move online, it's crucial to protect our internet activity. One key tool for this is a virtual private network, or VPN. It's especially important when you're on public Wi-Fi networks like in coffee shops or airports.
I have to admit, I've done some online banking at the airport before. Probably not the smartest move, huh?
Well, it's not ideal. Public Wi-Fi networks are notoriously insecure. Hackers can intercept data on these networks, potentially stealing sensitive information like login credentials. A VPN creates a secure, encrypted connection that hides your online activity from prying eyes. It's like having your own private tunnel through the internet.
That's a great visual. A VPN's expensive.
Many VPN services are quite affordable, and some are even free. It's a small price to pay for the added security. And it's not just for public Wi-Fi. Using a VPN even in private spaces adds an extra layer of protection.
This is all great information, but I have to ask, with all these precautions, doesn't it make life more difficult? I mean, remembering all these steps and being constantly vigilant sounds exhausting.
That's a fair point. But here's how I like to think about it. Security isn't about making life difficult for you. It's about making it difficult for criminals to steal from you. Once you establish these habits, they become second nature. Think of it as an investment in your financial well-being.
When you put it that way, it makes perfect sense. Are there any other online threats we should be aware of?
Absolutely. One thing to watch out for is suspicious links and poor grammar in emails. Fraudsters often create fake websites and emails that look almost identical to legitimate ones. However, there are often clues that can alert you to a potential scam. Look for poor grammar or misspellings in emails. Professional companies rarely make these errors, and it's often a sign of a phishing attempt.
So if I get an email from my bank with typos, that's a red flag.
Exactly. And be cautious when clicking on unknown links, especially if you're unsure of the sender. When in doubt, hover over the link to check the URL and only click if it's from a trusted source. A few seconds of verification can help prevent malicious software or attempts to steal your login information.
That's really helpful. I never thought to check the URL before clicking.
It's a small step that can make a big difference. Now let's talk about something that might surprise some of our listeners: the importance of protecting physical documents. In our digital age, it's easy to forget about paper trails, but they can be just as vulnerable to theft.
What kind of documents should we be worried about?
Any document that contains personal information can be valuable to identity thieves. This includes bank statements, credit card bills, medical records, and even junk mail with pre-approved credit offers. Before discarding these documents, it's crucial to shred them or tear them up into small pieces.
Wow, I never thought about that. It sounds like we need to be vigilant both online and offline.
Absolutely. It's about creating layers of security in all aspects of your life. Another often overlooked aspect is social media. While it's great for staying connected with friends and family, it can also be a goldmine for identity thieves if you're not careful.
Really? How so?
Well, think about the kind of information people often share on social media. Birthdays, hometowns, family members' names, pets' names. These are all common security questions for various accounts. If a thief can piece together this information from your social media profiles, they might be able to reset your passwords or gain access to your accounts.
That's scary. Should we just avoid social media altogether?
Not necessarily. It's more about being mindful of what you share and who can see it. Review your privacy settings regularly. Be cautious about accepting friend requests from people you don't know, and think twice before posting personal information.
Those are great tips. It's amazing how many different angles we need to consider when it comes to security.
It can seem overwhelming at first, but once you get into the habit of thinking about security, it becomes second nature. And remember, it's not just about protecting yourself. By being security conscious, you're also helping to protect your friends and family.
This has been incredibly informative. I know I'll be implementing some of these strategies right away. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
Yes, I'd encourage everyone to take some time this week to review their current security practices. See where you can make improvements, whether it's enabling two-factor authentication on your accounts, getting a password manager, or investing in a virtual private network. Small steps can make a big difference in protecting your financial future.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today. Thank you for sharing all this valuable information.
It's been my pleasure. Remember everyone, stay secure, stay vigilant, and stay financially fit. In this digital age, your best defense is knowledge and proactive measures. So let's all commit to upping our security game and making life harder for those digital fraudsters out there.
Absolutely. And that's all for this episode. Until next time, keep those finances protected and your future bright.